Greetings, everyone. Greetings, fellow travelers. Welcome. Today, our 51111 has Michael Kopf, the podcast host of what's the name of your podcast, Michael?
So on Tuesday nights, I have the energy that surrounds us. Wednesday nights, I have riding through the unknown. And occasionally, every other Thursday or twice a month on Thursday, we're fine tuning it. I have a show called Paranormal Verses with a couple in England. And Sunday nights, temporarily moving to Thursday nights. I recently teamed up with Emily Men's house on the Beast system.
Oh, wow. A lot of irons in the fire. Michael, I think we kind of, you sent me your bio and the updated one was pretty enlightening, and I was glad I have arms on my chair. Because there was a lot there. 2 years old, you had your first paranormal experience or encounter. You have been channeling since your teen years. You've been a student of the occult, anything from Huna, timeline therapy, tarot, palm reading. That's just to name a few. You also have a passion for genealogy and mythology. In your young life in this stint, you've already had three NDEs. You're an avid astral traveler, Reiki master, and a licensed reverend. Not to mention all those paranormal investigations you've been on. Just a couple, right?
Right.
I
I
think you meant
know.
it's like 200 or something crazy like that.
Over 100, yeah, in just a few years. So it's quite an accomplishment.
Oh, absolutely 100%. And, we've already been talking for almost an hour and a half now, just about everything that you can imagine. And I think one of the things that kind of drew me in was when you had said that your biggest interest is in metaphysical, and metaphysical and science can often be juxtaposed. And so for you, what does metaphysical mean?
So metaphysical is kind of, to me, is a lifestyle. It's not a faith, it's not a religion. It's all personal experience and personal growth, and it's looking at the world through a lens that's, you could almost argue, is unfiltered because the lens is what you make of it. So if I want to walk outside and go, man, it's a very cloudy day, I can go, well, a lot of people will say clouds is gloomy, so I'm gonna be sad and withdrawn and just because it's cloudy out. Or I could go, well, the sun is still out there. It's just behind the clouds, and go out and have a fun day. So that's what I mean by metaphysics for me being perspective and non-filtered is it's how I choose to react to the environment around me determines where I'm going to be. So it's all about me, my self-divinity, my choosing my own path. And I'd like to take a moment and just say the one thing that I love about metaphysics above other things is it's all about personal choice. And I like to say if I choose to turn right on a street and then go, oh, wait a minute, trouble looks like there's trouble ahead. I can go left, I can turn around, I can turn right, or I can say, well, I'm not going to let what looks like trouble which may not actually be trouble, to turn me so I can go straight. So I'm free to choose any path. There is nothing that says I have to go straight or I have to turn around. I can go where I want to go. And that's the freedom I found growing up in metaphysics is if a choice didn't resonate with me, I just simply made a new choice. And there was no going and beating myself up for making a wrong choice because there are no wrong choices.
There's just a few unpleasant results from those choices every now and again.
Or as we commonly will say, lessons to be learned.
Yes, depends on the size of the stick, right?
Oh yes.
Oh,
I laughingly will say to people will say, "Oh, I took a cosmic 2x4 to wake me up," and I go, "You're lucky. It took a cosmic 2x12 to wake me up."
yeah. Oh, okay. So mine's a 12-pound hammer. That's what I had was the 12-pound hammer. Oh my gosh. So one of the interesting things though that's part of the metaphysics is even some of the ideas that people put out there. I know some people, regardless of all the reports of NDEs, that they still are skeptics. And even with this astral travel, and I'll use a personal experience for me, and you had mentioned in your bio too that that's something you just do. So I do have dreams. I don't have memory of astral travel, so I did do a session with someone and they had told me, "Oh, by the way, those times that you wake up and sometimes you just wake up and you have a feeling. You don't really have a dream or a story. You just wake up and you have that feeling. And it's not necessarily good or bad. There's no judgment on it, but you just have a sense that you've done something, gone somewhere. And I definitely have that." And she says, "That's because you're astral traveling." And I've asked why. Why it is that I don't remember. And I know a lot of people go through a lot of steps to achieve that remembering in the astral plane. So is this something that came natural to you, or is it something that you feel you kind of had a little bit of an inkling and kind of learned how to do, I don't know, I don't want to say a better job, or just made it more accessible?
That's a really good question. And for me, it was just something like I went to sleep one night, and next thing I knew, I was hovering in the atmosphere on Ra's ship, talking to Isis and Ra, and then off wherever I needed to go. And so I never really had in my mind I couldn't do this or I couldn't do that. So I viewed the astral plane as my playground where I could just go and explore, or if I got called to a certain area, I would go and see what's going on. And an interesting thing too to point out is like you were saying, how you feel when you wake up, is there were times like I could go to sleep at 10 o'clock at night, wake up at 8 o'clock in the morning, and feel like I had no sleep, be so exhausted, a little sore, and be like, what in the world? And I knew I was active in the astral plane. That's the one thing that people, I feel like, don't really understand is they view the astral plane as like a playground where you can just go experience stuff, come back, no problems. It's like a movie out there, and it's not actually that free. Is if you get into, say, a fight with someone and you get hurt in the astral, you will wake up and you will have those injuries and that pain and not be able to understand why I went to sleep totally whole and healthy, and now I'm waking up with an arm that's not really working well because it's super sore, can't lift,
You
and it's
could
like I didn't sleep
you
funny.
you
So,
could really say it's a pain in the astral. Okay,
yeah.
I'm good with that.
And there are areas in the astral plane where I don't recommend just going and hanging out because there are energies out there. They've been coined as being like shadow zones, and you go there and the energy will just drain you. It creates cords to you that will just drain you and they don't care how much they're draining from you. So if you ever see a friend that's like super hyper, goes in the astral, and then all of a suddenly for days is like dead to the world, so to speak, like a zombie state, chances are you need to get them to cut cords because they went where they shouldn't have been, so to speak, or they weren't prepared to go to. And so I don't want to scare people away from going into the astral. I just want people to be aware of where they're going and what they're doing and the consequences of choices that are made. Because I have a lot of friends that are just like, it's so cool that people go in the astral and I want to go in the astral. And it's like, yeah, it's cool to do, but you gotta be careful. It's not this playground of, you know, meadows and
Right. So
flowers everywhere.
do you set intentions before you go to sleep at night or?
The only intention I set is if I'm needed somewhere that I go and able to do what I need to do. And if I get a feeling like a friend may be in trouble, I'll go check on the friend, see what's going on with them in the astral world. And if they need help, help them out, go back to what I'm doing. And the interesting thing about not believing in limitations or having limitations in the astral is, for example, you and I don't live close to each other. But if we were in the astral plane and I had a feeling something was wrong with you, I could be there in less than a nanosecond because I've learned how to travel so fast that it's like before I even finish thinking, I'm already there. And it's because nobody's ever told me you can't go that fast. And so I have other friends that are like, yeah, I have to sit there and meditate in my astral body, and then this gateway will open up, and, then I'm there. And I'm like, well, that's great. That's how it works for you. That's cool. So astral traveling is all based on your perception and how you feel what works best for you. So don't sit there and if you're listening to people's guided meditations and are like, I'm already there, but the meditation is telling me I shouldn't be there. So I go back so that I can follow along with them. I'm like, you don't need to. If you're already out, go. Do what you want to do. Don't wait and have someone tell you now you're ready to go.
Yeah, it is different. And none of that has ultimately, to my remembrance, worked for me. I don't have any memory, but I've been told that I astral travel when I sleep. And like I said, I sometimes I will feel very fatigued, like I haven't slept. And other times it's been a very sound sleep only after a few hours. So I think it's could be possibly different for everybody on how they achieve that access to what we're calling the astral plane? Because I know some people will say they're going there to see someone, and it'll be maybe a family member, whether they've crossed over or not. I mean, you could just go there with an intention to go see somebody. But
Right.
most of the time, it sounds like you're just kind of go. It's like, let's go.
Well, so my first memory that I have really of the freedom was is having a ship hovering above the earth in space and protecting like a Stargate, and something coming through that wasn't supposed to. So I went out of body into the astral onto the ship and talked with the bridge crew of what's going on the ship, and was like, okay, so they're not stopping, they're coming through. Well, they're not supposed to come through. Well, okay, I'll be right back. And go up this little, I'm guessing a tube thing, but then my next image is me just walking on the top of the ship in outer space. And I have no gloves on, no helmet, but my outfit is different, and I've learned to coin it as a nano suit. And it keeps, and I'm fine. And I reach a certain point on the ship, and I'm looking at the gate, and it starts to activate, and ships start coming through. And I'm like, no, you're not allowed to come through. You need to turn back or else. And they're like, well, you don't scare me. You're just one person. And I put my hand out, and this energy all of a suddenly would either push the ships back in, or if they refused, would just crush and turn them to dust, and then close the gate, lock it, so to speak, so that the other ships couldn't come through. Walked back down and onto the bridge and was like, so what's the deal now? Everything okay? And they're like, yeah, everything's green. All right, back down to earth I'll go. And I'll just be walking around as if nothing happened.
Wow.
And I always thought at first that, okay, that's a really cool metaphysical image, memory to have and everything. And I didn't realize until a few months ago to a year ago, less than a year ago, that that's part of a different part of my life I had no idea about. And it was like, oh, so this is the dilemma I'm in, is when everybody talks about having memories of different things. I'm so in the metaphysics and growing up that way, I'm confused now as to what is a metaphysical memory. And by that I mean past life or astral star body, star being deal versus this part and being the programs. And so I don't know. And that's what I'm working on unlocking, is determining what is what. And to me, that's one of the hardest things to do, because it's like you're like, oh, it's so cool that I was able to do this. And then when I find out, oh, that's because of something else, I feel like I'm kind of robbed a little bit. That here I thought this was, my energy, me doing me, and finding out no, I was doing something for somebody else. And it's like I kind of feel that's unfair and uncool, that I would be led to believe this was me and it's not. And I've come to terms with when everybody says, "Oh, I want to know what I, you know, did here, did there with the programs," I have determined I just want to know what programs I was in. I don't want to know what I did. I don't need to know what I did, where I went, because if I know what I was in, then I have enough information to discern what memories are what, and I can feel whole and not be wondering what is what. So I know I kind of deviated a little bit from
Oh,
your.
no, because that's like perfect because it was interesting. You made a statement. You said, well, you felt like you were robbed, but it was not me. Is it possible that maybe that what you're viewing as not you was just a different aspect of your own self or a different aspect of what we would call self?
So when I say it wasn't me, is I don't know if it was an alter or aspect of me. If it's an aspect of me, I'm like, okay, yeah, it could have been Star Bean. It could have been me just being me. Could have been, with hybrid, having star seed DNA activating in people now. We're starting to realize, oh, we have attributes accustomed to that. And so, maybe, I've always been this and never knew I was this. And it's activated a long time ago, in which case, cool. But yeah, when I say, I try to be careful to say what is memory for me because I don't want to say, oh, I have a memory of doing this, and then finding out, oh, that was my hybrid, not an alter, so I don't want to claim false memory in a situation where everybody's already going, well, we can't really prove, we were part of this or that. And people try to jump in on, and claim this or that. And when they're not and make it really awkward. And so I'm like, I do my best to, when people ask me, I'm like, this is what I know is this, and these are what I'm questioning. Whether or not they're related, I don't know yet. I'm working on it. And so that's how I present it. And so I'm very careful because because with my father being in the military, I know false valor, is a term that gets thrown around a lot, and it means something to me because when you have a soldier who serves, they're serving a call that is their purpose and mission and is a sacred call. And when somebody calls up and says, "Oh, I was, served 2 years in this," and you find out no, they didn't, it kind of diminishes and puts a dark stain on what the service of what others are doing, legitimately doing. So I do my best not to do that and to claim only what I know is mine, what resonates with me. And so that's why you'll see a lot of times in different aspects where I'll share information or I may stay quiet. And I'm not staying quiet because I don't have anything to share. I'm staying quiet because I don't want to share what I know may or may not be real to that moment. So I respect everyone who's having the moment and going, all right, this is your guys' moment. I'm here to support it. I'm here to, help with the safety, bringing it forward and share it. And I'm acknowledging your share, and that's it. And let it go. I don't sit there and go, oh, well, if they did this, so should I. And it's like, nope, doesn't work that way.
Yeah, and I mean, and if you think about it, that's just one aspect of the powers that we have too, is not just the astral, but it's also we can control some of the lucid dreaming aspects of when we sleep too. So that I think is a big part of once you realize you're in control of that dream state. And I don't know how it is for other people, but I usually get real quick snippets. I very rarely get something that tells a story that's a little bit longer. And dream is one thing, but lucid dreaming has a totally different feel to it. It's much more vivid. I mean, even when you say lucid dream, that immediately pulls something into your mind's eye, and you're seeing flashes of your different experiences that you've had as a lucid dreamer. Um, so as far as that goes, do you feel like you're able to, are you in control of those lucid dreams, or are you more of an observer, or how is your interaction with that plane?
When I lucid dream, most of the time I let the dream go how it's going to go. But I also have in the back of my mind through the entire thing of if I'm getting into a point where I'm like, wait a minute, something doesn't feel right. This dream is no longer my dream. Something has infiltrated this dream. I'm aware enough that I can take action to remedy it or look at what has infiltrated why, what did I need to see, or, why did I need this experience, and then remedy it. But one of the things too is I want to, clarify a little bit is, there's a lot of people who are out there that say, oh, I can lucid dream and this is how, to do it and this is why you can do it and this is all the benefits to what you can do with it. And then you have people who are like, oh, I can do this or that in my dreams. And you people see everybody going, ooh, ah, tell me more, tell me more. And that person's getting a lot of attention. In human nature, people are like, hey, I want some of that attention too. I've had something similar. And so they'll start to tell their story, and everybody will be like, well, yeah, that's cool and all, but you didn't do it like this person did. And so that person will feel a little jaded and go, well, what's the difference? Well, if we're doing it the same way, why don't I get the attention and start telling the story the same way as that other person? And everyone's like, oh, and everyone's looking at him going, oh, so you're doing it now. Oh, ooh, ah, and they're getting the attention. But what they don't realize is there's going to be that one person who's going to show up, who's going to sit there and go, so how did you do this? How did you make that happen? And you can't answer that. And you're going to work around the question and answer it roundabout without really answering it. And people are going to notice that and go, wait a minute. You how can you do this if you can't explain how you did this? Where the person over there that had the same experience explains how he did it. You're misleading us. And you will lose all credibility. And so what I want to make clear is to everyone is no matter where you are in the scale of lucid dreaming or astral traveling or having experiences, don't embellish your experience. Keep your experiences authentically yours because people will actually gravitate more to the authentic stories than the stories that are seem so far-fetched that they're like, yeah, you get 15 seconds of fame of everyone like ooh and an nine, but down the road they're gonna be like, yeah, I don't remember who it was that was doing this or that, but you who, you have constantly said this about your experience, that's really cool. And I want to learn more from you because you constantly sharing this. So I just want to, I just want to be clear with people that there is no different levels of what you're doing. Just be you. Just acknowledge yourself where you are, and that's perfectly where you need to be.
100%. That transparency goes a long way with, being yourself. I mean, and, I think hopefully people will, like you said, I think that ability to detect people that are a little less than um, honest. One of my favorite phrases is to say when someone tells me something that's a flat out lie, I'll say, well, that's less than accurate. That might lessen the blow, and it's not like a finger pointing thing, but hopefully it gets enough point across that I see through your fog. Your mask didn't work, sort of a thing. So yeah, I mean, it's really important to be, transparent with what you are and who you are.
Right. And the one thing, like, when we were talking about, like, you mentioned mythologies and legends, I love researching those. And the fun of it is stripping away all the embellishment that the authors put into it and all the stuff that was added to make it more interesting and going, where is the kernel of truth? Because in every myth and every legend about anyone or anything, the story is it's always based on a kernel of truth. It's in there somewhere. So the fun is going through, doing the research, finding what resonates. And if I find if you have an aspect of yourself that, you know, I'm going to be authentically who I am, and therefore everything around me is going to be authentic. When I look at that, so that being my perspective and my stance, when I look at stories like, Troy and the Odyssey, the Iliad, look at, ancient myths of gods and everything, I'm able to go, well, you know what? This sounds, he was a good fighter. Yeah. But I don't think this is really accurate that, somebody hit him with a sword on his arm and it broke and he was fine. I'm like, there's probably was armor there, or, you're leaving something out to make this person bigger than who they are. But when you get down to like the nitty gritty and you go, well, this person did, led these people and gave hope, you're like, and you start to feel like a tingle inside of you, is how I view it. I'm like, there's the truth. There's the truth to this mythology, to this legend of this person. That's a kernel of truth. And you go, so now with that kernel, let's look at, then you take that out and you go and you look at the story again and you're like, okay, so with him leading this and that, all of this, yeah, that's great to, support the leadership role, but that's not necessarily true. And you'll go through and you'll be like, oh my gosh, he did this. You'll get it again. You're like, there's the next kernel. And so that's how you derive what's, in my opinion, the truth behind all the other stuff. And when you realize you can do that with the past, you start to realize you can do that in the present. And that's what I think is helpful for people, and why I say it's important to be authentic, because when you're authentic, people are going to resonate to that authentic part of your story. And if that's you, then they're going to resonate with, majority of your story and who you are, or the parts of your story that they need. And in the metaphysics, one of the things why I bring that up is there's a principle in the metaphysical world that is the one of the hardest principles to wrap your mind around. And it's simply called the mirror effect. Now, the mirror effect, what that is say Auric and I are sitting here, and I'm like, man, she's got really great hair. She looks really nice. The mirror effect says, I have great hair. I look really nice because I'm seeing me in Auric. And when we run across people who are like, oh my God, I can't believe what that person did, you're not actually saying, I can't believe what that person did. You're saying, I can't believe I did that. So what you're seeing in others is what you're seeing in yourself. And so it's a great tool for growth, but it also shows you your shadows. And they always say, there was a radio show from the, I think, 1940s, 20s, 30s, I think, called The Shadow. And
Yep.
the tagline was, The Shadow Always Knows. And I'm getting chills even now putting this together because I've never thought of this until now. But when we, try to hide our shadows, they show up in the people around us. They show up in the environment around us. So we really, honestly cannot hide. And it knows everything. But there is one distinction, though, that I've learned that I think will help a lot of people is we're always taught shadow or dark is bad. And in reality, the shadow side of yourself is just an aspect you haven't looked at. And so it's not good, it's not bad. It's just a side of you that is you. And, nobody is perfect. So when you look at it from that lens of, so I keep using the word perfect, and there's a reason why I use that. And for me, I know I'm sidetracking, but I'm just making a point that'll make the story make more sense. Is I learned through years of self-study, perfection is simply the acceptance of all flaws and knowing you're flawed. That's perfection. And a way you can look at it is look at your table, look at your desk, look at your tabletops, countertops, and everybody will say they're perfectly smooth. You put it under a microscope and they're jagged as all get out. It's not smooth. And so that to me is perfection, is you're accepting all the flaws that are in that table as being totally smooth. So why can't you say, you know, I make mistakes. I don't always communicate great. I, sometimes, react before I think. Those are all flaws, but they're me. And I accept it and I'm learning from them. and I'm changing, working on getting better at it. But in that moment, I'm perfectly who I am because I know who I am. And so that's where the ideal of perfection really comes from, is knowing yourself, accepting how flawed you are and how great you are in the same sentence, in the same visualization. And so, really, what the shadow side is our flawed side that we've been taught doesn't serve us, doesn't need to exist. And when you bring it in, you're actually making yourself more whole and more perfect because that is you.
Yeah, and you know what's kind of interesting about what you said about that? I used to have a job where I would paint, customize ornaments. It's literally the biggest Christmas store in the world. It's in Frankenmuth, Michigan, and I spent 3 seasons working there, and we would personalize ornaments, and it would be funny because you'd get the order, you'd take your tray, you'd paint them, you'd put them on a shelf, and the next day you'd have checkers come in and look at these ornaments, and I would always say every time I would put that tray up, I would think, oh, perfection is definitely the enemy. And even though I would see all of these flaws in those ornaments, if you got one back, that was okay. It was something that you didn't see. It was a matter of my perception and my perspective, whereas somebody else took a different angle or a different look at it and they didn't see what I saw. So it was different. And then, when you look at someone else, that individual looking through their lenses it's a different set of filters than that person looking back at you has a different set of filters of what they see. It's still all like what you say, what you think in your head is you're seeing that individual as someone separate from you, but it's not. You are that production. You're a portion of. I don't use the fractal. The word fractal to means that you're separate. No, you're a different version of. You're just a different projection, variation of that other person or persona, whatever you want to, whatever you wanted to say on it. Something else though that you mentioned earlier, um, was really kind of leading towards an aspect of discernment. And I think that that's going to be really big with all the stuff that's going on in the world today. And relying on what you're saying that is like a gut feeling or something that resonates with you. The one thing that I would like to add to that is that we can have things resonate with us and be looking at the things the wrong way. The way that it's not going to be helpful.
Right.
So be careful with that, with what resonates with you, because we can get taken in, and the only reason I can kind of say that a little bit is that I worked in the substance use, or substance, they don't use substance use and abuse, they say substance use disorders, that when you crave these things that you go beyond reason or logic and you will continue to crave whatever it is. Could be, repetitive behavior that's going to hurt your physical form or your mental form, and you do this and you know it, you know it in the very core of your being, this is not good for me, and you go out and do it anyway. So and somebody says, well, that's illogical. No, it's perfectly logical for that individual to behave in that way, to do something that's detrimental to them, because they're satisfying something within them that is outside of what we call the norm. So, having said all of that, and whatever perspective that you have, again, that's the um, perfection is the enemy.
Right. And one thing too is to go and really get into the discernment and resonance is, and I'm not sure how awake, not woke, awake the audience is to this, but there's a term that, and I use movies to try and clear, make it clear what I'm talking about. And there's a Star Trek movie where Picard is on this planet, and I think, if I remember right, it's not Nemesis. What was the one before Nemesis where they were on the planet where everybody was staying young and
I'm a Star Trek. Sorry,
they,
I'm the original
the Federation,
Star Trek Trekkie, where I could say that I shook the hand of the original Chekhov. So I'm kind of a
lucky.
purist. So I haven't seen the Jean-Luc Picard ones. So you'll have to maybe.
Yeah, Walter Koenig did so good in that role.
Okay.
But so in this movie though, the premise is these people who have learned to adapt to this radiation that's coming through this area that's called the Briar Patch in space. That they've learned to utilize it, and in utilizing it, they have understood like they're living to be 400 years old. And so they have the apprenticeship, mastership schooling like we had in the Middle Ages. And their understanding of time is one moment to another moment. And when I was watching it, and there's a scene where Picard and this woman that he's, feeling drawn to are in this field and she blows this daffodil like kind of thing. I think those are daffodils where it sprays out the seeds. And he sits there and she goes and says shh to him. And it just stops in space where they are. And he's like, "What is this?" And he goes, "You're experiencing the moment." And it resonated with me and going, oh my God, life consists of moments, and our truths are based in moments. Our perceptions are based in moments. Hence, our resonance is based in moments. And so I learned is in this moment, sharing this story resonates with me because it fits this moment. 2 minutes from now, this story has no meaning because the moment's passed. Life is full of moments. And what we need to do when we talk about discernment and what resonates with you is understand what's resonating with you in this moment is for a reason. A year, a month, a day, a week, however long, the resonance will change. And it's not that your discernment was wrong, it's you're in a new moment. So, what happened in the past moment is done. You're in a new moment. This is a new opportunity. So, like, an example is when I was growing up, I would read King Arthur books. I was infatuated with King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. I wake up one day and all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? I know enough about them. Let's look at Robin Hood. Look at this guy. Look at what he did, what he stood for. And I may be a year or two of looking into him. And then I might go, hey, look at these pirates. What's up with these pirates? And it's not that the information, I no longer was interested. It's I learned what I needed to learn in that moment, moved on to another moment, was open to that moment, open to the next moment, and you'll get to a point to where you're gonna sit there and go, now, what was the reason behind Arthur, Robin Hood, pirates? What's a common thread? What was I looking at in these moments? What was drawing me in? I'll be like, well, they all helped people, or they stood up for themselves. Well, what is something I need to do? Well, I need to stand up for myself. So I start to take aspects of their story and make them my story that resonate where I am. And as I grow, the story changes. And I was, going back to King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table, I was, in a moment of going, hybrids, star seeds, who are star seeds? What are hybrids? And I heard in a talk Laura Eisenhower go, well, there are the Knights of the Round Table match up to the Zodiac. And my mind went, what?
Mhm.
And so I started to look into, how do the knights relate to the Zodiac? And then I was like, well, you know what? If the Knights of the Round Table are aspects of the Zodiac is a universal system. So star seeds are universal. And I went further and said, could the Knights of the Round Table have been hybrid star seeds? And researching our star seeds, star beings connected to the zodiac. And I ended up putting together a little video. It's on my YouTube channel and my Rumble channel where I look at the Knights of the Round Table and I'm like, here's King Arthur. Here's who he represents in the zodiac. Here's who he represents in the element zone. Well, as this element zone, that element resonates with these star beings. Could Arthur have been one of these star beings? And I was like, all right, Merlin, Guinevere, Morgana, all the knights of the round table that that everyone views as the popular 12. And I did that for every one of them and was like, look at, what star beings they could have been or hybrids of and go, now, what's the story of the round table and everything? They were knights that stood up for humanity and defended humanity and was trying to raise humanity's awareness from a system where they're fighting to survive to let's work together as a unit with equal voices. Look at what we can accomplish. And then you have the force that comes in that says, we can't allow this in this world now. And it's shattered. And the dream is shattered. So it becomes erased from history and becomes a legend. So this is where I get into the whole kernels of truth aspect that I was sharing earlier. And I was like, did Arthur really exist? And my truth and resonance says yes. Will we ever know for sure? No, because, how do you recreate something that's been erased? The people who are erasing history to fit their agenda are really good at covering their tracks and are never going to say, "Oh yeah, we did that. We're sorry. We're changing our ways. We're going to admit to everything." If you believe that, good luck to you. I hope the best for you, but personally, I don't see that day coming. And so it's that's where I say, look for the kernel of truths that are your resonance, is you don't need that proof. You
And
know what you know, and that's all that you need.
you had made a really good point about how that those 12 individuals, how they were for humanity. And I think that there are other 12s that may or may not be, depending on what side of the fence that you're on. But I'll just say 12 tribes, and there's more than one set of 12 tribes. I really found it interesting when I was looking at the local area that I live in, and there are a lot of I'm going to use the term tribal American because I consider that when someone is a native of a country, that means you're born there. So I was born here in the United States, so I consider myself a native of the United States. So to be more accurate, of the ancient peoples that were here, would be tribal Americans, and there are a lot of them in the area that I live in that have reservations. And I don't know how this even popped up. It was a few years ago. And there are news articles that talk about the 12 tribes here in Michigan. And it'll name you, but the regions are different because the borders were different, 2 or 3 or 500 years ago. And they were up into probably a lot of Ontario, out over like what is considered now New York State. So there's a lot of things where we can pull in that 12 tribes. So, that 12 that you brought that up, it would be interesting to pull in to see where these other 12s fit because it's all culturally, I don't want to say motivated, but inspired.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at history, there, I mean, science fiction really, I think, brought to light this. And I, so I grew up watching, and again, I'm going to use a television show for a second, Battlestar Galactica. There was the 12 tribes, 12 colonies that gathered together and were fleeing to the 13th lost tribe, which was Earth. And I always thought it was interesting that space was coming to Earth to find their lost tribe. And then you go fast forward to the new version they made where, you know, the Cylons look human, and that all aside, that's another story for another time. But there's the finale of that, and I'm not going to say spoiler alert because if you haven't seen the finale by now, there's nothing to spoil because it's been out for years, so that's on you. But they show them walking side by side, him and his Cylon counterpart, watching history evolve and civilization evolve around. And it was all about the 12 colonies. And there were 12 different planets, and it's humanity. And then you go and you look at there's the 12 tribes of Israel. There's the 12 tribes, in different aspects in every generation. And so it's like, to me, when I see that, it's like, and I know some people don't like the term white hats versus black hats, but I'll say there's benevolencies that they always say are working with us to help us. And when I see things like that, it's like I feel like that's their influence going, look, we can't tell you what you've forgotten, but look at how you're putting all of this together and seeing all these little lines or tethers out there, and you're weaving them and finding this story and unraveling this truth and going, that's they're helping us. They're showing us this in a way that it's like they're not going to sit there because they know us as who we are to go, okay, here's point A, point B, this is where you're going. Because everyone's going to be like, no, it's not that easy. They're going to be a lot of resistant, a lot of different temperaments. But if you go 12, 12, 12, people go and formulate and start to agree with each other. Wait a minute, 12 means something. 12 is, and it'll start bringing different cultures, different people together. And I think that's the benevolence helping us is to awaken us to see what normally people would be like, I admit I watched in the 80s Battlestar Galactica, and I'll be honest, the 12 Council of 12 went over my head. But now I'm like, wait a minute, Council of 12. That's not going over my head. It's stopping and going, wait a minute, who is this? What is this? And it's a gathering of different leaders getting together to benefit the tribe or the group as a whole. And I'm going to be careful not to use the word humanity because I feel like that's going to exclude star beings that are here helping us. And so,
Hybrids,
and the
walk-ins. I mean,
hybrids.
yep,
And so that's the gift I think that shows disclosure and the awakening is happening is more and more people are starting to pick up the nuances that have been around us for all these years that have just been waiting for someone to pick up and go, wait a minute, this nuance and this nuance, put them together. Well, this makes this story, which now brings in this nuance. Well, this new story brings in this part. And so that's how it's done. And that's the gift I think they've given us.
absolutely. Yeah, we've been going on for a minute. Is there anything else that you would have like a final word, Michael, or maybe how people can get a hold of you
So I have a
or
link
connect
tree.
or connect or connect?
Yeah, I have a link tree. I'll send it to you. And that's got all my pages on there. It's got my website. It's got the channels for all my shows, whether it's YouTube or Rumble. It has my newly formed imdb.com. I got to remember that one because it's so new. But my page on there and the shows are all listed there. So I'm surprised at that. And that was something I didn't even know existed because I thought that's strictly movies for professional Hollywood people. And I did an interview with someone and he goes, oh, by the way, you're now on this platform. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, put your shows on it. You should be on there. And I was like, when did they open up the podcast? So I took advantage and put myself out there and created. I have a page for myself, which is what's in the link tree. And on my page is linked the show pages, so you can go find those. The only thing is B System is not listed because that is Emily's show, and so out of respect to her, I don't want to overstep my role and create something for her that she doesn't want and Be like, surprise! I did this without asking for
Yeah,
your show. So
I think you
I,
did. Yeah, you did send me the link tree link. So I can go ahead and put that in the description. So any good and final words in our parting?
I gotta say, I love this when I do this to my guests, and I'm feeling them right now. Going now, well, you know what we feel like. I would say the one thing I like to point out with my shows at the ending is no matter how far you feel you are in the rabbit hole, don't give up because right around the corner could be the proverbial arm that lifts you up and brings you closer to the top or out of the rabbit hole, depending where you're at. And just follow your intuition and your guidance of if it's the right arm to grab, grab it. If it's not, don't grab it because you don't know what's gonna happen. And so, yeah, always have hope that what's around the corner can make life so much better than where you're at if you're feeling down, and that there's always a hand. Just need to see it. And old story that I was told that's kind of like a Catholic joke, and I'll share it, and it's not in bad taste, so don't worry. But you have the flood. This flood comes in, and these people get up on their roof, and this boat arrives and says, "Hey, we're here to take you to safety." No, God's gonna save me. And the boat leaves. All of a sudden, a ship comes by and says, "Hey, the water's rising. You're about to drown. You need to get on." No, God will save me. Helicopter comes and drops the ladder and says, "Climb on. We'll get you out of here." No, I have faith. God will save me. That's my beliefs. They end up drowning. They get to the pearly white gates, and they stand in front of God and say, "God, how could you let us die?" And God looks in and goes, "I sent you a boat. I sent you a ship. I sent you a helicopter. What more did you want from me?" So just goes to show, you never know what it'll look like. So be open.
Absolutely, 100%. That story now, as I know you studied tarot a little bit, that reminds me of the Five of Cups. You see those cups that have spilt in front of you, and you don't see the two behind you, or even the four where you're lamenting over those four, and you don't see the hand of God right there with that fourth cup going, "Yo, here I am. You ready to turn your stiff neck?" You know? So yeah, that's kind of it. So yeah, thank you so much, Michael. I really enjoyed it. I will have both of our links all in the description box below. And I think maybe for our next discussion, we could maybe talk a little bit about NPCs.
Ooh, that sounds fun.
Yeah. So, yeah, just a little teaser on that one. So, thank you so much. Likes, share, and subscribe. And we'll see y'all on the flip side. Many blessings.